Have you ever thought that a simple bottle of pain relief, something millions of people trust every single day, could become a deadly weapon? It was the fall of 1982 in Chicago. Life moved at its usual rhythm. The city was bustling, the air carried the scent of autumn, and people reached for their trusted Tylenol to ease headaches, body aches, or maybe just a lingering fever. But what no one knew was that inside some of those familiar red and white capsules, death was waiting. In just a few short days, 7 people, from different neighborhoods, different walks of life, would take Tylenol and never wake up. They didn't know each other. They hadn't bought their bottles from the same store. And yet, all 7 died in the same horrifying way. Lab tests revealed the cause. Potassium cyanide, a lethal poison, had been carefully placed inside select capsules. Someone had tampered with the bottles, then returned them to store shelves, where innocent hands would unknowingly pick them up. This wasn't just a tragedy. It was a national shockwave. People across America panicked. Drugstores pulled Tylenol off the shelves. Parents checked their medicine cabinets in fear. Johnson & Johnson, the manufacturer, launched one of the largest product recalls in history. Over 31 million bottles destroyed. Despite a massive investigation, this case has never been solved. No one has ever been charged with the murders. No solid evidence ever confirmed a suspect. Over 40 years later, the question still haunts us. Who poisoned the Tylenol, and why? Today, we revisit the Tylenol Murders, a cold case that didn't just change the lives of 7 families, but transformed the entire pharmaceutical industry. A case that led to new packaging laws, tamper-evident seals, and forever altered the way we buy and trust over-the-counter medicine. We'll explore this mystery based on verified records from the FBI, archival reporting from sources like the Chicago Tribune, and insights from the recent 2025 Netflix docuseries Cold Case, the Tylenol Murders. So settle in, because to understand how something so ordinary became so deadly, we need to go back to where it all started. Let's begin with the victims, and the city of Chicago, 1982. To understand how something so normal turned into a national nightmare, we need to go back to where it all began, Chicago, 1982. Back then, Tylenol was everywhere. It was the #1 pain reliever in the U.S., made by Johnson & Johnson. Millions of people trusted it for everything from headaches to muscle aches to fevers. You could grab it off any shelf, open the cap, and take what you needed. No seals, no plastic wrap, no foil barrier. That kind of safety packaging simply didn't exist yet. There was a kind of innocence to the way people used medicine. You didn't second-guess it. You just trusted the label. That trust would be shattered in just 3 days. The first victim was Mary Kellerman, a bright, 12-year-old girl from Elk Grove Village. On the morning of September 29th, she wasn't feeling well, just a cold, nothing serious. Her parents gave her a Tylenol capsule before school. Moments later, Mary collapsed in the bathroom. By the time she reached the hospital, she was already gone. Just hours later, in Arlington Heights, Adam Janis, a 27-year-old postal worker, took a Tylenol for chest pain. He died suddenly that same day. His family gathered to grieve, shocked, confused, heartbroken. But then a second tragedy. Adam's younger brother, Stanley Janis, and Stanley's wife, Teresa, also took Tylenol from the same bottle while at the family's home. Both collapsed within minutes. Stanley died. Teresa fell into a coma and passed away shortly after. That's 4 lives gone within hours. And no one yet understood what was happening. Then, in the days that followed, more victims. Mary McFarland, a 31-year-old mother of 2, collapsed at her workplace in Lombard after taking Tylenol for a headache. Mary Reiner, 27 years old, had just given birth to her 4th child. She took Tylenol to ease post-delivery pain. And finally, Paula Prince, a 35-year-old flight attendant, was found dead in her apartment in Chicago. A bottle of Tylenol sat open on the bathroom counter. 7 people, different towns, different backgrounds, all seemingly healthy. All took Tylenol, and all died. Can you imagine? You take something for a simple headache. You hand it to your child. You offer it to a loved one. And it ends in tragedy. These weren't drug users or people involved in risky behavior. They were everyday folks, teachers, parents, workers, children. That's what made it so terrifying. The randomness. The complete lack of warning. It's no wonder panic spread fast. Within days, Johnson & Johnson issued a full recall. 31 million bottles pulled from shelves. Police cruisers rolled through neighborhoods using loudspeakers, warning people not to take Tylenol. Hospitals were overwhelmed with calls. Drugstores locked up their stock. People dumped their medicine cabinets into the trash. The country had never seen anything like this before. It was a true public health crisis, and no one knew how far it might spread, or when it might stop. And yet, even amid the fear, there was no clear answer. Who would do something like this? Why target something so ordinary, so trusted? Was it a calculated act of terror? A personal vendetta? A twisted thrill? To find those answers, investigators had to act fast. But the clues were scarce. So now that we've met the victims and felt the shockwave that hit Chicago, let's move into the heart of the mystery, how this deadly plan unfolded, and what authorities discovered in those crucial early days. In less than 48 hours, 7 innocent people had died. Different towns, different stores. The only thing connecting them was a small red and white capsule. Tylenol. Authorities were scrambling to make sense of what was happening. At first, it seemed impossible. How could a trusted over-the-counter medicine be killing people? But by the morning of September 30th, doctors and medical examiners began noticing a terrifying pattern. Dr. Thomas Kim, the Cook County Assistant Medical Examiner, was one of the first to suspect foul play. He had examined the body of Mary Kellerman, the 12-year-old girl, and noticed something alarming, a faint scent of almonds during the autopsy. That smell was the telltale sign of cyanide. Potassium cyanide is a deadly chemical. It acts fast. Just 65 milligrams, less than a single grain of rice, can kill a person in minutes. It stops the body from using oxygen. Victims collapse, their organs shut down, and death comes quickly. Dr. Kim ordered tests, and the results were conclusive. Cyanide was in Mary's system. Then came the next shock. Cyanide was found inside the Tylenol capsules she had taken. That was the moment everything changed. Investigators rushed to test bottles of Tylenol from other victims' homes. One after another, the results came back the same. Capsules laced with cyanide, deadly doses hidden inside a common painkiller. This wasn't a bad batch from the factory. It was something much more sinister. Someone had deliberately opened individual bottles, tampered with the capsules, and returned the products to store shelves, likely in retail locations across Chicago's suburbs. And it wasn't just one store. The bottles came from different manufacturing lots, which meant the poisoning didn't happen during production. It happened after the bottles had been shipped and stocked on shelves. That detail was crucial. It suggested the killer was local and had a chilling level of access. Think about that for a second. This wasn't a glitch in a machine or a company error. This was a person walking into pharmacies, unscrewing childproof caps, filling capsules with poison, one by one, and carefully placing them back. Then they simply closed the bottles, resealed the boxes, and walked away. There were no fingerprints, no surveillance cameras, no witnesses. In 1982, most retail stores didn't have security footage. There were no tamper-proof seals. Bottles opened as easily as a twist of the wrist. The killer exploited that vulnerability and vanished. By October 1st, panic had fully set in. The story was everywhere, on front pages, TV news, radio. Police cruised neighborhoods, telling people through loudspeakers, "Do not take Tylenol. Do not give Tylenol to your children." Johnson & Johnson took swift action. They issued a nationwide recall of every bottle of extra-strength Tylenol, more than 31 million units, worth over $100 million at the time. It was the largest recall in U.S. history. The FDA and FBI joined the investigation. Health officials scrambled to calm the public. But the fear was already in full swing. People stopped buying over-the-counter medicine. Sales of Tylenol collapsed. Parents locked away their medicine cabinets. The entire pharmaceutical industry was thrown into chaos. And in the middle of it all, investigators were trying to figure out who did this and how many more bottles were out there. What made things even harder was that there didn't seem to be any connection between the victims. Mary Kellerman was a child. The Janus family were adults. Mary McFarland worked in a phone center. Paula Prince was a flight attendant. They didn't shop at the same places. They didn't know each other. They just happened to buy Tylenol. And now they were gone. Despite the massive recall and media frenzy, more tampered bottles continued to surface for days. In one especially chilling moment, a news crew doing a follow-up piece filmed inside Paula Prince's apartment and caught a close-up of the exact Tylenol bottle she would later take, from which she would never wake up. That footage aired after her death. It was a haunting image. one that drove home just how invisible the threat had been. In response, the U.S. government pushed for new regulations. Within months, manufacturers were required to introduce tamper-evident packaging: foil seals, plastic wraps, glued boxes, anything that could show whether a product had been opened. It changed the way medicine was sold forever. But for the families of the victims, and for investigators on the case, those changes didn't answer the most important question: who poisoned the Tylenol? That mystery still lingered. So, with the timeline now in place, and the horrifying method exposed, let's move into the investigation itself. Because while police had few clues, there were suspects, letters, a name that stood out, and a chilling theory about why it all happened. So now we know what happened. 7 lives lost, bottles tampered with, a nation shaken. But one question still hung in the air. Who did this? The investigation began immediately, led by the FBI, with help from local police, the FDA, and U.S. Marshals. It quickly became one of the largest product tampering investigations in American history. Agents tested more than 20 million capsules. Thousands of people were interviewed. Hospitals, pharmacies, and manufacturing plants were combed through. Tylenol bottles were tracked by lot number and shipping route. But this was 1982. There were no surveillance cameras in most stores, no security barcodes, no DNA testing, no fingerprint databases like we have today. Even if someone had left a trace, it may have gone unnoticed. The FBI was working with almost nothing. And yet, in early October, they received a letter. Typed, cold, demanding. It was sent directly to Johnson & Johnson. The author claimed responsibility for the Tylenol murders and demanded $1 million to make the killings stop. The signature at the bottom? James W. Lewis. That name would go on to haunt the case for the next 4 decades. So who was he? James William Lewis was a computer consultant with a long history of fraud and deception. He was living in New York City at the time the letter was sent. The FBI quickly tracked him down, arrested him, and charged him, not with murder, but with extortion. In 1983, he was convicted and sentenced to 20 years in prison for the blackmail attempt. But here's the twist. Even though Lewis wrote the extortion letter, the government could never prove he actually poisoned the Tylenol. In fact, evidence showed he may not have even been in the Chicago area when the poisonings occurred. When questioned, Lewis claimed he only sent the letter as a way to frame someone else. He called it a twisted form of justice. Authorities didn't buy it, but they didn't have enough to charge him with the murders either. For years, Lewis remained the prime suspect, largely because of that letter. His name appeared in every article, every documentary. His photo was etched into the public memory of the case. But suspicion isn't proof. And despite multiple interrogations, raids on his home, and continued surveillance, Lewis was never formally charged with the killings. He served 13 years in prison for extortion, then walked free in 1995. In 2023, just 2 years before this recording, James William Lewis died, taking with him whatever secrets he may have held. But let's pause here for a second, because while Lewis was the most talked about suspect, he wasn't the only one. In the early days of the investigation, police briefly arrested a man named Roger Arnold. Arnold had worked in a chemical plant. He reportedly owned books on poisons and had acted suspiciously in bars, talking about cyanide and how easy it would be to slip into pills. Sounds incriminating, right? But it wasn't enough. Police searched his home. They found guns, survivalist materials, some chemicals, but no cyanide. No Tylenol bottles. No link to the victims. Arnold was released and later filed a defamation lawsuit for being publicly named. His life unraveled after the false accusation. In a tragic twist, he was later convicted of a separate murder, killing a man he mistakenly thought had turned him in. He died in 2008, still denying any involvement in the Tylenol case. There were other leads too: anonymous tips, strange phone calls, copycat threats. In fact, the panic sparked several copycat poisonings across the country. The most infamous happened in 1986, when a woman named Stella Nickel laced Excedrin capsules with cyanide to kill her husband, hoping it would look like another random poisoning. She was caught. She's still in prison today. The Tylenol case showed investigators just how vulnerable the public really was, and how easily terror could be spread, with something as simple as a pill bottle. As the years went on, the case grew colder, but it never officially closed. In the early 2000s, new testing techniques, including DNA analysis, were applied to old evidence. A few partial fingerprints, reopened capsules, bottles from victims' homes. But again, nothing conclusive. Investigators looked at Lewis one more time in 2010. They even took DNA samples. He cooperated, but no charges were filed. Then came a twist in 2025, with the release of a Netflix docuseries titled Cold Case, The Tylenol Murders. The series revealed never-before-seen footage of James W. Lewis being interviewed just months before his death in 2023. In the recordings, Lewis once again denied involvement. But the show highlighted new psychological analyses, suggesting he fit the profile of someone who could have committed the crimes. The series also presented an alternate theory, that the tampering may have been a kind of terrorism or protest. A lone actor sending a message, possibly someone with a vendetta against Johnson & Johnson or society at large. But again, no hard evidence, no forensic breakthrough. The case remains unsolved. So let's step back. Despite one of the largest investigations in FBI history and over 40 years of analysis, there's still no definitive answer to who committed the Tylenol murders. James W. Lewis remains the most likely suspect in the eyes of many. But without proof, the question still stands. Was he the killer? Or just a manipulator taking advantage of a national tragedy? And if not him, then who? Someone out there might still know the truth. Someone might have seen something, said something, missed a detail that, in hindsight, could have made all the difference. And that's what makes this case so chilling. It wasn't just a random act of violence. It was a targeted attack using trust as a weapon. Tylenol was in everyone's home. It was the symbol of comfort, of reliability. And that's what the killer used against us. As we close in on the final chapter, we ask, what has the world learned from this case? And what did the families, those left behind, fight for in the years that followed? Let's explore the legacy of the Tylenol murders, the changes, the consequences, and the mark it left that still lingers today. So where does that leave us? More than 40 years have passed since 7 innocent people died after taking a simple painkiller. The Tylenol murders remain unsolved. No one has ever been convicted. No confession. No justice. And yet, this tragedy changed the world. Because of what happened in Chicago in 1982, tamper-evident packaging became a global standard. Those plastic safety seals, foil barriers, and click-tight caps we see on medicine bottles today, they all started because of this case. It's likely those safety features have saved millions of lives over the decades. In a strange way, the horror of the Tylenol murders sparked progress, forcing both the pharmaceutical industry and federal regulators to put consumer safety first. But even with all those changes, the families of the victims are still left without answers. No one was held responsible for the deaths of Mary Kellerman, who was just 12 years old, or Paula Prince, a flight attendant who bought Tylenol on her way home from work. No closure for the Janis family, who lost 3 members in a single day. The safety improvements were critical, but justice was never served. And that brings us to you. What do you think happened? Do you believe James William Lewis was the killer, manipulating investigators, hiding behind that extortion letter? Or was it someone else entirely, someone who never came forward, and may still be out there? Maybe it was a calculated act of terror. Or maybe, just maybe, it was the work of someone who wanted to watch the world unravel, one pill at a time. We'd love to hear your theory. Who do you think committed the Tylenol murders? Do you think the case could still be solved, with new forensic tools or fresh eyes? Leave a comment below. We read every one. And if you have your own theory, or a similar case you'd like us to cover, let us know. Thank you for joining us on this journey into one of the most haunting cold cases in American history. This has been Cold Case Mystery, the Tylenol murders. If you enjoyed the episode, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a new mystery. And remember, even after all this time, this case reminds us how fragile trust can be and how quickly it can shatter. Stay curious, stay safe, and we'll see you in the next episode.